Okay, it's showtime. Alex Mondosian here. I'm glad you made it. And I am not in the normal environment I typically am, which is San Francisco. I'm in Arizona right now at a mastermind called Genius Network. But the show must go on, so I'm in a hotel room, and that's what my background is. That's the best I could find, and this is the best lighting I could deal with. But for right now, just do what we always do when we start. What is your name and the city you are hanging out from? Just type that in, and that'll be the first expression of engagement, because today it's about the 5-step sequence. There are 5 steps. The 5-step sequence to convert premium clients, in other words, to enroll them, to sell them without pushiness or without looking salesy. It doesn't feel good when you're getting sold, right? I have a friend, Jeffrey Gitomer. He says people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So rather than selling someone, how about putting them in the position to buy? Now, I'm putting you in the position to buy what I'm saying. I'm selling you on the concept that there is a sequence. I'm going to teach it to you. And it's a way so that it is a process that is natural, seamless. In other words, doesn't have a seam, doesn't feels like the other person is selling you. And it's also something you can do with kids if you have kids, or with parents, if your parents are still living and you get along with them. You can do it with colleagues, friends, your spouse, your ex-spouse. It doesn't really matter, but this sequence works extremely well. And if you miss any part of the sequence, if you try to leapfrog from step 1 to step 4, let's say, then it doesn't work. It doesn't feel right. So we're going to start in about 12 minutes. And the typical show that we have is for the first 10 to 15 minutes, I get you to engage and get things moving, get your fingers moving, because you're a human being, but it's your human doing that is the expression of, who you are and what you become. So the first way is just to talk about your name and the city you're hanging out from. And as you'll see, we have people from all over the world who come in here, from Brazil, from Iceland, from parts of Europe, from South Africa. Of course, North America is well represented. So if you haven't ever introduced yourself, then do that. Now is your chance, because at least your face will pop up, and we have the same tribe that comes in, and we have new people who will watch this week after week. Now, the other thing I want you to do is take your mouse or your mouse pad and go to where it says share. And there's a share button underneath the video player. And I want you to share it on your Facebook. I want you to share it in a Facebook group that you're in, maybe in your profile page, or I have it on my fan page, which is probably where you're watching right now, unless you were invited by somebody else. Now, that share button is a very powerful way to not only expand the reach if you're a marketer or a teacher, but also to share with your own people so that they can come to your Facebook pages and consume the content that's meaningful to you. Now, today it's all about selling without being salesy. It's about conversion without looking or appearing pushy. And if that's something that you want your tribe to learn about, then all you got to do is click the share button, and however many people share, it gets the message out. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. This is a public service I do every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. East Coast time. And if you're in Asia or Australia, of course, it is the following morning on Saturday, if you're watching this in another hemisphere. But for right now, all I want you to do is just type in your name and the city, and you'll see that you'll be greeted by our production manager, Leo, who's in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he'll be welcoming you, with his fingers, and he handles the production. So I can't type while I'm watching, so he comes in as me and engages with you. And this is a system and a format that I would invite you to use as well. You don't have to have a podcast every single week on iTunes to have a following. You don't have to have a long video every single week about content that is meaningful to you. You can just do it one time a week, like I've been doing for the past 6 years, and people will keep coming and watching and learning from you. It doesn't have to be about business either. And that's the magic of Facebook because of the networking effect of that share button, which is why all it takes is one click and you can share it before we begin. Now, the replay, if you haven't been here before, will replay the moment I'm done. So I'll be teaching for about half an hour, and then I'll ask for some takeaways, which are, aha moments, like what was the biggest distinction you got from this session? And then we're done. After I conclude the video, you can stay here and interact with others, because sometimes it's a joint venture bonanza with people meeting people from all over the world, not just from my tribe, but other tribes who have been invited here. So once again, we'll start now in about 10 minutes. And I just want you to type in your name and city. And if you've already done that, type in, here's another engaging question, right? Because the more engaging you are when people are watching you, whether you're selling or not, on Facebook, the more Facebook loves you. Like the more engagement you have dialoguing, and then what I call trialoguing with other people engaging with each other, well, that is better for your presence and your exposure and visibility on Facebook, because Facebook loves engagement, right? And so here's an engaging question that I would encourage you to use if you have a show, because it's super easy, and that is, what is the word for the day? So if there were one word that you'd want to represent this day or morning or evening, depending on where you are in the world, what would that word be? And I'll give you my example. My word would be engage. And you can pick a noun, an adjective, or a verb. I prefer a verb because you're a human being, but it's your human doing that makes a difference, as I said before. And verbs are action words, right? So it could be create, right? Or it could be flow, or it could be generate, or it could be any verb, noun, or adjective you can think of. So just type that in. And then if you see a word that pops up from someone else that's close to yours, or maybe the same, there's a good opportunity to interact and kind of hang out virtually. You see, so simple questions for engagement usually lower the bar where people get more involved. And if they're more involved and engaged, then they're going to pay attention. And this is your student body and your following, your customers, your clients, your patients, whatever you call them. So that's another way you can get people, engaged. And I'm not just saying it to tell you the tip. You just do it now. What's your word for the day? Let's see it. And I'll get back, when I'm not teaching, and I'll reach out to you if it's a cool word. Some people come up with some pretty good words. Just keep it nice and clean and type it in. So go ahead and do that now. And then we'll begin in about 6 minutes. Excuse me. Again, the reason we start at about 15 minutes after the top of the hour is people are coming on, people are sharing, and it takes time to get engagement going. So about 15 minutes into the hour, I start the content, and then I go for about 30 to 35 minutes, and that becomes the repurposed content. In other words, we repurpose it. We have it transcribed. We have it in the form of a blog and articles. The video is edited, so I'll count down, and I leave about 2 seconds of a break. And my production manager, Leo, he'll pull that out and put the bumpers on, which are the marketing online blocks that kind of come up like this and go back. If you've seen them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen them, you'll see them soon. And that ends up, as my branded content. Now, imagine all I'm doing is pressing broadcast and then stop broadcast. And then the content can be repurposed and made visible on Facebook pages, on Twitter feeds, on YouTube, on blogs and in article sites and directories. That's all repurposed, and that is what I'm about to start, the 5-step sequence. And each month I have a theme. So this month it's about sales and conversion. And last month, which was February, that month was about repurposing. And for the next month coming up, I'm thinking about making the topic transition, like when you're in transition, whether it's with work or in life. I think it's a good topic. And each week I cover different points of that specific topic. So each month has a theme, and then each theme has different sub-themes that I teach on. And that's one way for you to create an editorial calendar. Even if you have bad lighting and you're in a hotel and then you have the only picture in the room as a background, what matters most is what is actually being delivered. And I'm hoping that you enjoy this. I want to, get your thoughts on your big distinctions or what your biggest takeaways were. So, all right. So we're going to begin in now 2 minutes. So if you've just come on board, again, introduce yourself and the city you're from. What's your word for the day? What's your word for the day? And I want to see it. If you're ready, type in ready, or you can type in yes, ready or yes, and I'll be ready to go. So let's do it. Just type it in now. Let me see them. Again, I'm wanting you to engage so we get more exposure. I mean, I'm doing this deliberately and intentionally, and I want you to do the same when you're teaching, at least on Facebook or Facebook Live. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hi, and my name is Alex Mondosian, and today's topic is about the 5-step sequence to convert premium clients without pushiness. Now, I don't know if pushiness is a word or not, but without looking pushy, without feeling pushy, without being salesy. My friend Jeffrey Gitomer says that people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So the goal is, what if you could put someone else in a position to buy versus trying to sell them, because that's being pushy, right? But if you get them to buy, it's kind of pulling them into your world and whatever product or service you have to offer. Now, you could do this in a group. You could do this one-on-one. You could do it in a big auditorium selling scenario where you have over 800 people watching. It doesn't matter. It's the same concept. And if you stick around, I have some persuasive selling sentences. They're sentences that have persuasion locked into them, and they've worked over the years. And every time you say these sentences, and it's going to be a gift I'll give you by the time we're done, it's kind of like tapping the rock, right? So imagine a rock that you keep tapping. Now, everyone thinks, who come into sales, they think that you can just tap once and then the rock splits. And that's not the way it works. It's a constant tap, like sentence after sentence after sentence, trial close after trial close after trial close, as my good friend Ted Thomas talks about. And after tapping the rock enough times, then it splits open, and it splits open with the same force, but you just kind of, weakened it so it opened up to you. And a prospect is the same way. It doesn't happen with one sentence or with one presentation. Many times it takes several presentations. The highest sale that we've gotten with our sales organization is just over $400,000, and it took 8 touches to go back and forth. Now, isn't that worth it? Like, it's $50,000 a touch, right? So it doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen forcefully. It's more like jiu-jitsu. We have a lot of Brazilians watching. So in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's fun to watch because it's like it's wrestling, but you're working with someone else's body weight. You're working with leverage, and it's a very elegant, martial art. And much like judo, if you are enrolling someone and converting a premium client, this is a client that is over $10,000. That's the way I define premium. Then you can utilize their weight and their energy so that they're persuaded on their terms. You don't want to do unto them as you want to be done unto. That's the golden rule. There's nothing wrong with it. But the platinum rule, which one of my mentors, Tony Alessandro, has written about, it's a book, The Platinum Rule, is you do unto others as they want to be done unto. Right? It's their why that you're utilizing. It's their what. It's their where and when and all the other elements to persuade someone. So here's the question. What's a premium client sequence? Because we're talking about sequencing. What is the sequence? Well, this is a sequence that has different stages when you first are exposed to a client and they're first exposed to your message. They're ice cold, and then they get a little warmer, but it's still cold. Then they get warmer, they're warm, and then they get hot. And then if they keep coming back again and again as a multi-buyer or an evangelist, as I've called them in the past, then they're like steam. They're at the boiling point. Centigrade, that's 100 degrees, and Fahrenheit is 212 degrees. So that's what you want to take them through. It's a sequence. There's stages. And I believe everything in nature is sequential. Now think about it. What are all the sequences in your life? Not just your age, right? Age is sequential, but going to grade school, right? Kindergarten comes before first grade, and then second, third, fourth, fifth, right? And then all the way to getting a PhD, which if you're watching right now and you have one, you know that it was sequential. You had to go through the prior sequence in order for you to graduate to the next level. And that's the same way you enroll and convert premium clients. Now, non-premium clients are converted the same way, but it's not as magical, because with a higher end sale, a high ticket sale, and I'm saying over 10,000 US dollars, with a higher end sale, there's more at stake for them and for you. So it's more noticeable if you're being pushy. It's more noticeable if you're trying to sell them, right? Because it's a higher ticket item. They're going to have to give up more of their freedom, money, right? They're handing it to you. So they're making an assessment whether it's worth parting with that amount. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's just as easy to enroll someone at $10,000 as it is $100 if they don't know you. Because if they don't know you, they simply don't know you. They have to get to know you first, then they have to get to like you, and then trust you. And I'm sure you've heard the know, like, and trust sequence. So everything is sequential in nature, I believe. And that is exactly the way enrollment works, or sales, whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it conversion. So step one, in the first stage, you have ice, right? Just imagine a block of ice, frozen, right? Someone super cold. And these are, I call them seekers. Okay, they don't know you, they don't like you, and they don't trust you. And it's not like they dislike you, but they don't like you yet. They don't know you yet. They don't trust you yet. So if you're watching for the very first time and you've never met me, you've never heard about me, you never know what I stand for or how long I've been teaching in the digital marketing world, then you're probably in this category. You're ice cold. I can't just take $10,000 from your pocket, right? You're what I would call a seeker, a seeker. Those are people who are ice cold. Now, here's some examples. If you're at a multi-speaker event, so I'm sure you've been to a seminar or a workshop, and if you haven't, I'd be very surprised, but this is kind of a workshop. Imagine you're in a room and there are multiple speakers who are speaking. And that speaking model is where the speaker will sell something from the stage, and then the speaker will share it with the event marketer, whoever is putting on that event. So that's called a multi-speaker event. And you have seekers there because many of them don't know, like, or trust you. The only thing they have to go on is your introduction. That's why people put a lot of money into video introductions, because you got about 2 to 3 minutes to gain rapport, because when you start speaking, you want to make sure rapport has at least been activated, so that if you're going to enroll them in something, you got the rapport out of the way. Let's say if you are a Facebook Live attendee for the first time, right? I don't have your opt-in address. If this is the case, you're watching, you're lurking. Okay, you're a seeker. Okay, you're ice cold. A networking event. If you're a networking event goer, now I'm not talking about Business Network International. I'm talking about a networking event where it's a cold networking event and you don't know anyone there, then you are amongst other seekers. So if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I'd like you to give me $10,000, then the chances of you saying yes are slim. Now, step two, cold. Now, ice is like a block of ice, right? It's not water yet. Well, cold water is cold water. Like you can't swim in it for long. It's cold. But these people are what I call suspects. And they know you. They know of you. But they don't like you yet and they don't trust you yet. Okay, so they're different than suspects are different than seekers who are seeking information, right? Because they know you, like they've gotten to know you. So maybe you've gotten to know me, in the past 7 minutes, and maybe you're a suspect. If I were going to enroll you into anything, which today I'm not, but other than the content, but if I were to enroll you, then I would have to keep going through the sequence, through the stages where you get warmer and warmer. Or if you're enrolling me, same goes for me. And so step 3, examples of suspects are Facebook Live attendees who comment. So if you just are watching, then I would consider you a seeker if you're not in my opt-in list or you haven't bought anything from me. But if you actually comment, then that's engaging, right? You're actually getting an indication that someone is engaged with you. So Facebook Live attendee who comments, right? Or people who Google search you, like they're actually looking out for you. Or a non-subscribing podcast person, person, right? So if someone is listening to your podcast, they haven't subscribed, then I would put them in the category of cold. They're not warm yet. They're still cold. And they're not ice. They're water, right? But they're cold. And we've got to move them up to sequence. And what's the next sequence? Warm. Step 3 is these are warm. These are prospects. Now, when someone is warm, then you have a way to interact with them. So for example, if they know you and they like you, then they've decided to opt in with you. They've decided to take the opportunity to give you their email address or their mobile number, or maybe they're in a Facebook group. So they don't trust you yet, okay? They don't trust you, but I believe they know and like you, and that's why they're warm. Now, prospects, so we've done seekers, suspects, now prospects. Prospects are opt-ins for email, or maybe they're members in a Facebook group. If you have a Facebook group, they're members there, right? That you can communicate with them within that group area, ongoing. Or they're a friend of yours, right? So they know you, they like you. A mobile text opt-in, that's a highly intimate opt-in because, in my opinion, email is less intimate than mobile. If someone has your mobile number and you're texting them to remind them to show up, or to remind them to get on a teleseminar, or to remind them to get into the room because the seminar is about to start, or to remind them about their username and password, which they haven't logged in yet, whatever it may be, that's a more intimate way of interacting, but still it's a prospect. They haven't purchased yet. Now, prospect intimacy is an interesting concept because just like regular intimacy, the type of opt-in or the type of tool used, I believe has a different level of intimacy. For mobile, I think it's the highest level of intimacy. Now, if you go to marketingonline.com/Scipio, that's SKIPIO, marketingonline.com/Scipio, that is my mobile texting app. Thanks to Randy Garn and the great people at Scipio. They're in Utah, and they have a great platform that we're building out. I use that as a mobile texting platform. Now, email, I use Infusionsoft. I think that's medium intimacy. I think it's lower than mobile, but it's higher than a Facebook group. So the lowest level, in this sequence is, if you're in a Facebook group, okay, that's intimate, but not as intimate as email, because now I'm coming into your inbox, right? Now, if I'm soliciting, I have control to give you a message, right? On Facebook, you can ignore it, but with email, you have to delete it or read it or store it or save it. And then the highest form is when it actually comes into your phone. Even if you check your email on your phone, I think mobile texting is the highest level of prospect intimacy. So all these stages have varying degrees. So in the prospect stage 3, you have low, medium, and high intimacy prospect, but they're still not a buyer. They haven't bought. Now, when they spend $1 with you, then they're hot. And that is step 4. Now, hot is like a spa, like a jacuzzi. I know for Fahrenheit. It's about 104 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot, right? And these are the people who know, like, and trust you, but they're first-time buyers. Now, there's a big distinction here between hot and the next level. So step one, remember, is ice. Step two is cold. Step three is warm. Step four is hot, but we're not done yet. They know, like, and trust you, but they've only purchased one time. And one-time purchase is not lifetime value of a customer. One-time purchase is an incident, right? But they can divorce you. They can ask for a refund, or they can leave, right? We want them to buy again and again and again. So examples of, let's say, the hot stage, they're buyers, is a paid seminar attendee. It could be a teleseminar, it could be a webinar, but something that is paid, right? Or a course, if someone's paid for a how-to course, or a paid coaching session. If you have one coaching session, they're hot, okay? They're not the next level. And I'll tell you what the next level is in just a moment. But if someone buys a book from you or an ebook, they're hot, they're a buyer. They know, like, and trust you, and it's a first-time transaction. Your goal is to go for the second-time transaction, because once they buy a second time, not an upsell and not a cross-sell. An upsell, cross-sell, when you're buying in the first session, you see something that you also want because it would be a nice compliment to what you're buying. Would you like fries with that? When I was growing up, about 45 years ago, that's what the kid behind the counter said at McDonald's. Would you like fries with that? And every time that question was asked, McDonald's would make more money. That's an upsell. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a second transaction. Like after they've bought, then another time. That's why it's more difficult to get $10 a month after month in a membership site, than to get $20 from someone, because they're saying you have the right to charge my credit card or process my payment month after month. That's a very highly intimate interaction. So continuity, right, is where you have the final stage. Now, here's a key point. With a membership site, okay, if you have a membership site, okay, they are not hot. They are the next point, which is steam. $10 a month or $20 a month, and it's month after month. I consider them this level, which is step number 5, steam. So you got a block of ice, you got ice water, warm water, hot water, and then steam. And you notice we go from ice to steam. It changes consistency, right? They're stages, they're sequence. Now, these are the multi-buyers. These are the ones who give you more lifetime value. Imagine if someone purchased from you and they never left. Imagine what life would look like. Well, these people not only know, like, and trust you, like a first-time buyer, which is hot. That's the hot stage. But they actually refer and promote you. They're promoters. Why? Because they're buying again and again and again. So I want to make sure you realize this with a membership site, okay? If you have one, those people are not hot. They are what I would consider steam, which is stage 5. And that's the second sale and beyond. An upsell, getting more of a sale, is not steam, in my opinion. And because I've set these stages up, I've defined them this way, because getting another sale from another transaction, from another session, is so much harder than getting a bumped up sale from an existing session. So an upsell or a cross sale, like buying 2 of something, is a lot easier than to have someone purchase again and again, because every time they purchase, they're telling you they trust you. Now, what about mistakes? What are you going to move away from? Well, these are silly mistakes that marketers make with premium client funnels. Now, a funnel is a sequence, right? So the sequence is, okay, you have a seeker. They don't know, like or trust you. Then they become a suspect. They know you, but they don't like or trust you. Then they become a prospect. They know and like you, but they don't trust you yet. They haven't bought anything. And then you have a buyer or a customer, a client, a patient if you're in the medical field. Now, there's still the next step. That's stage 4. Okay, those are hot. Steam is where they buy again and again and again. So the goal of your business is to create steam. Let that be a big takeaway. In fact, if you have any takeaways, wherever you're watching this right now, wherever you're reading this, wherever you're listening to this, type it in and let me read it. What's your biggest takeaway so far? Because I'm going to show you the mistakes, but what about the 5 stages? Which of the 5 stages is new for you? You probably have heard of cold, warm, hot, but I've added ice to one side and steam to the other because I think 5 stages are necessary. Okay, so let's go to mistakes. Mistake number 1 is enrolling someone without an intake. Now, these are for premium clients. What's an intake? When you go to a doctor, they have an intake. It's you fill out this paperwork. And the reason for it is so the doctor can diagnose you better because you're giving them information. What are you allergic to? What tolerances do you have? What are you feeling like now, right? That's called diagnosis. Well, the problem in sales and conversion is with high-end clients, if you enroll someone without an intake, that's a big mistake, even if they're willing to give you the money. So every high-end client that comes through my world, there's always an intake there, always. And the reason for that is I want to know what I'm to talk to them about. I want to know what my sales team and enrollment team is going to be talking about. We want to know what their problems are. We want to know if they're coachable. We want to know how committed they are, right? These are all questions on an intake. If you want to see an example of one, go to marketingonline.com/GBO intake. marketingonline.com/GBO intake. GBO stands for Guerrilla Business Online. And I have many students who have gone through that. If you're watching and you've gone through Guerrilla Business Intensive, thanks to T. Harv Eker and Veronica and Richard Tan of Success Resources, I've taught that course nearly 35 times all over the world. And GBO is the continuation of that. Guerrilla Business Online, Guerrilla Business Intensive is the 5-day event and 3-day event that I teach. Now, even though someone has been with me for 3 days or 5 days, depending on where you've taken the class, I still have an intake. I still have an application where I want to know about their challenges. I want to know about their pain points, not to convince them, but to understand them, right? If you remember Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the habits, seek first to understand, then be understood, right? So understanding someone is critically important. And to do that, you need some kind of a form or application. I call it an intake. So if you do it without an intake, it's a big mistake. And you're going to get rejected because you won't know what they want because they won't feel understood. Now, here is the mantra that I teach. And if you're one of my students, you know this. If you're not, and you're watching for the first time, welcome. I hope I can take you from prospect to buyer one day soon. I hope I can take you from suspect to prospect or hopefully seeker to prospect. But I like to look at 80% of the time we're pre-qualifying and 20% of the time we're promoting. That's how you don't come across as pushy, which was the first card I showed you. The reason you appear pushy and that, or salesy, I don't know if this is the way you spell pushiness, but pushy just means, you're forcing someone into something. And, you know when someone is trying to, push you around with your heart and trying to convince you, it doesn't feel good. You can smell it, it just has a different, sense about it. So the way you want to do it is make it natural, take them through the stages. And sometimes you can go through the stages within an hour. Other times it takes a year. I mean, I had one gentleman who purchased a $100,000 consulting package from me for a year. And it took him 4.5 years before he decided. And he didn't hire anyone else. So, some people take longer than others. Mistake number 2 is enrollment without a deposit. So if you enroll someone, again, this is high ticket. If you enroll them and you decide to take all the money, that can be a mistake. Now, if you're watching, go, Alex, how's that a mistake? Shouldn't you take the money? Yes, it's important that you take the money, but taking a deposit is kind of like allowing them to dip their toe in the water because, they don't know what they're getting. I have a good friend, Marissa Murgatroyd. I was just at a mastermind at her place, and she and her husband, Murray, have a great place in the Los Angeles area. And I was there with a lot of other colleagues, and she has what's called commitment cards. So if she has a $20,000 package, she takes a deposit of $500, and it's a small card, and it just commits to $500, and then all the details are discussed when the student and she or whoever her coach is start discussing the process and what package they're going to get into. So she gets a bunch of $500 commitments, and it's called a commitment card. It's very clever, and she doesn't have a lot of dropout or recidivism, meaning backsliding. Like she doesn't got. And what's the refund request? $500, right? So I recommend always have some sort of a deposit. And when I'm doing an enrollment, I'll usually take a 10 to 20% deposit. Now, sometimes they'll want to pay a third. I'll take that. I rarely take the entire amount. Now, if you're watching and you've done sales, Alex, how could you be telling people this? What do you mean don't take the entire amount? I have learned that over the years, and I've been doing this over 30 years, I have learned that if I take a deposit, then I have longer lifetime value. I've measured it, right? So if I don't take the full amount, if it's a high ticket, right? If it's $1,000 or $2,000, I'll take the full amount. But if it's $10,000, I'll take $1,000 or I'll take $2,000, and then we'll either get the balance or we'll do a payment plan. I have a $30,000 mentoring, and I'll take $3,000 or I'll take 10, right? And the 10 is a 3-pay. If they want to pay the whole 30, I'll take the deposit first, even if they insist. And then after a few days, are you still all in? And when they say yes, you're cementing their steam. That's how you know you have steam. And plus, it's a second transaction. Like, for example, if you're meeting someone for the first time, and this is what my friends have taught me who were in the dating business. I have a good friend who built a business on dating, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but you probably know. And what he taught me, and it's a great way because you're dating your customer, right? When you're first meeting them, it's kind of like a date. It's better to have more interactions than one long interaction. So if you're going to go on a date, rather than having 1 2-hour date, go on 2 1-hour dates, right? One in the afternoon and one at night, right? And the one in the afternoon is less intimate. The one at night is more intimate. And you can decide after an hour. So the same principle, the same fundamental philosophy is what you do with the stages and steps to client conversion. You start with a block of ice, then you go cold water, and you warm them up, and you are warming them up. Now, if they move away from you, you can't warm them up. So you're in charge of warming them up if you don't offend them. But if you're pushy or salesy or manipulative, and they're sensing that all you want is their money, and it's not an equal exchange in value, then they're not going to let you warm them up. They'll stay like ice. My mother, Carol, stays like a block of ice when a salesperson comes to our house when I was growing up. Now, these days, anyone who comes to my apartment, I always buy anything they have because I don't want to, reject them. I want to protect their confidence. Enough people in my complex will probably reject them. The third mistake is enroll without follow-up. Now, if you're going to get a high-end client, don't you think follow-up is important? I can't tell you the number of times I've purchased something high ticket and there was no follow-up other than an autoresponder. An email is not a follow-up. A phone call is a follow-up. A text is a follow-up if you're given permission to text. The follow-up is about an intimate follow-up conversation to connect and see where they are at, to check out what temperature they are. Because you think it's, in looking at these stages, do you think that it can go up and down? Like maybe you go ice to cold to warm to hot, and then what if they cool down? They can go to warm and cold again. You can't talk to them as someone who's hot if they're actually cold or ice. You understand what I'm saying? It's not just talking to different age groups or to different gender. I'm talking about how warm they are to your value proposition. So here's a key point. Always have an onboarding process. The onboarding is the most critical factor to any funnel, and a funnel is a sequence. So when you onboard someone, you're welcoming them on board to what you've just enrolled them into, what you just sold them. The best onboarder I know is my good friend Lisa Sasevich. I've known her for over a decade. And when you go to her events, first of all, it's very difficult to leave one of her events without buying more continuing education from her, because she's very good at enrollment, from the stage. And she teaches that. She teaches, how to speak, to sell. She has the Speak to Sell course. And what Lisa does better than most, and there's a few other people I can think of, but I'm just going to name Lisa for now because I'm doing business with her. And she knows how to enroll with onboarding better than anyone else I've seen. So that's called a celebration. When someone has just purchased something from her, there's a sense of belonging that is fostered through a celebration process that she does. Now, different products and different experiences have different onboarding, but if you can celebrate, if you can give them a sense of belonging, if you can invite them to your Facebook group where everyone else is it's like a virtual dog pile. They're going, hey, how's it going? I'll give you an example of some cool onboarding that I did when I was consulting a Beverly Hills. It was a day spa, but generally women would go in there and they'd get facials. I think they had stations for hair cutting and then hair coloring and all the other stuff, right, that you would do in a salon. Well, they didn't have it was very high end, and they didn't have a very good track record of having people come in a second and a third time. And so they asked me to check it out because their services were great. They were just as expensive as the other salons in the area. In other words, they weren't over expensive. They were just pricey because it was in Beverly Hills, and that's the environment. And I observed for about 3 days. I went in there and I observed what they were doing, and they didn't do anything wrong, but they didn't do one thing that was really right. And now a lot of people do it. When someone is there for the first time, okay, you're a man or a woman, you're sitting in a chair. Imagine if people came up to you and said, "It's your first time here. Welcome. It's so good to see you." Not only people in the salon, but people who are customers and patrons of the salon, because they know you're a first-time customer. And they don't even need to ask you. You're not giving them a badge or what's happening in order for you to know that someone in the chair, in the salon chair, right, in the boutique, that they are a first-time customer. What could you possibly do without making it look obvious? Well, here's what I did. So the return customers or patrons all wore black smocks, the smock that goes around, to protect your clothing and, not get hair coloring on it or, fallen hair or whatever, makeup. All right. So they had black smocks. And so what I asked them to do is to have a navy blue, so it wasn't that obvious, dark navy blue smocks for the first time visitors. So anytime someone was laying down, in the chair or sitting up and they wore a navy blue smock, everyone in the salon was trained to welcome them. Now, can you imagine you're getting your hair done, right? Or maybe you're getting a manicure, and all of a sudden people come up and say, "Hey, welcome. It's good to see you. It's your first time." And you go, "Yeah, how did you know?" That is called onboarding. Now, if that's an aha moment, I hope that you write that down. I want to see it, but that's not overly obvious. It doesn't have like this seam to it, like it's so obvious, like you put them in a purple smock. No, it's just a subtle color change. Maybe we ran out of black smock, so we have navy blue, but it is obvious enough to welcome that person. So all the employees, all the team members, and as many of the patrons, because they like being welcomed, right? So they want to be doing unto them as they were done unto, right? That is the golden rule. So think about that, how you can add that to your business. What do you do with your first-time student, first-time patron, first-time member? So important to have onboarding. If you have a membership site, it's so important to have a button that says "Start Here." Stu McLaren, who used to work for me, and excuse me, now he's teaching me how to create tribes of people, the different membership, experiences. And the most important tab is the Start Here button when you go in, because the first time member, the first time visitor is different than the return visitor. The first time visitor to your website is different than the return visitor. They're colder, so you got to heat them up. So 23, this is my gift to you, 23 tested sentences to convert premium clients without rejection. Now, I have sentences that are for virtual events like this, and I have sentences that are for physical events. Now, let me show you the difference. So a tested persuasive sentence is just a tap, on a rock, right? And it takes 100 taps to split the rock. So you're wanting to open up the heart and win the heart of your seeker, then suspect, then prospect, then buyer, then hopefully multi-buyer, right? Going from ice to steam. So you're wanting to win that heart. Well, it's not going to happen with one sentence or two or three. I have 23 that you can add to if you want. These are 23 that have worked for me over the years. And they're for virtual and they're also for physical. Now, here's one. Raise your hand if you wish you would have seen this content a year ago, right? That's for a physical seminar. And that's a tested, persuasive sentence, right? Because you're getting engagement. Or imagine if you'd known about the 5 steps to converting clients a week ago. How much more money could you have made last week? Okay, that's a tested, persuasive sentence, but that's virtual. I'm not asking you to raise your hand because it's not natural. I'm talking to you one-to-one right now, whereas on stage, you're talking one-to-many. So we talk in the second person, like you, versus, okay, folks. So if someone is on a podcast, I like to talk in the second person, which is you or your versus, hey guys, or hey gang. I don't talk that way, in a virtual event, but in a stage presentation, you have a bunch of people sitting next to each other, then that's more natural. Well, imagine 23 for the stage and 23 for the virtual setup. And you can add to them if you want, but to get them, then I want you to text these letters, PSS, Persuasive Selling Sentences, and text it to 415-980-3555. Again, text the keyword PSS to 415-980-3555. See what I just did? That is the highest level of intimacy with an opt-in, I believe, mobile text. And these tested sentences, they come from a guy who was a great salesperson. His name was Elmer Wheeler. He worked as a consultant for department stores, and he found that with these tested selling sentences, which he wrote several books on, if the hired staff would just say specific sentences in a specific way, right, they would win the hearts of more sales. Whether it's selling a refrigerator or selling a couch or selling a car, there are certain sentences that work better than others. And so if you utter them, if you speak them, it's like another tap on the rock, right? And you'll see what they are when you go and you text that number I just gave you. Now, if you don't want to text that number, I have a less intimate way to get it, but I'm starting with the highest level and then downselling on marketing intimacy. And then my good friend Ted Thomas, brilliant stage presenter, he has trial closes. And trial closes are the same type of thing. They're just little trial closes where you're getting yeses from people internally and externally. It's not always asking for engagement. You can just say something so that they're thinking about it, and it makes his enrollment easier. By the time he's done in 90 minutes, he's given maybe 40, 50 trial closes, and it's just become a more natural sale when he finally gets to the close, which is at the end. And that's a big mistake people make. There is no one close. There's a lot of trial closes. And that's my final key point, is there's no one way to close sales. There are many, many ways. In fact, some people try to close without even opening the sale. So first you got to open, then you close. Are you with me? And that opening and closing is about taking them through the stages of ice, cold, warm, hot, and then steam. Now, my good friend, Jeffrey Gitomer, people hate to be sold, he says, but they love to buy, right? And it takes many, many taps. Remember, tapping the rock. It takes a lot of taps to open up a heart, in that case, splitting the rock. Now, if you don't want to send the text, then you can simply go to marketingonline.com/PSS, and you can pick it up there. marketingonline.com/PSS. I actually have mine in a plastic embossment, like it's laminated, because it's 2 pages. So I take it to a place called Kinko's here in the United States, and I have it laminated 2 sides back to back, and I just take it with me. You know, when I'm going to speak or when I'm going to get on a webinar, I just take it with me, especially when I'm selling something. Today, I wanted to sell you on the sales process, and this month is all about sales and conversion, and I'm hoping that you not only got something from this, but that you share it. Sharing is caring. And so there's a share button. If you're watching on Facebook, click on that and share it with your Facebook group or on your timeline or fan page. Okay, I'm Alex Mondosian, and I hope our paths cross again soon. All good wishes. Okay, what do you think? So here's the course or the master class, right? I love these. And I want to know your biggest takeaway, because I could guess at takeaways that you had, but I want to know, what's your biggest takeaway that you had? Please type that in. And Leo Fernandez will be acknowledging you, because I'm not watching that right now. So go ahead and type that in. If you had more than one takeaway, type it in. And typing in a takeaway, by the way, is a trial close. So when you're speaking on stage, or if you're on a webinar, if you get people to write or to type, that is warming them up. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, literally, you're getting their blood to flow. They're not just watching. Because if they just watch or listen, then they probably get numb and don't get as engaged, because it's boring. So the more activity, the more movement that you can induce in them, the better. Hopefully that's a takeaway for you. So what do you think? What's your biggest takeaway? Whatever it is, it could have been a sentence I said, or it could have been one of the principles or one of the mistakes. Type that in and let me see what you have to say, and I'll respond to it. As you're typing, we do this every single week. So we start at 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. East Coast time, or whatever time it is where you live. And I do it as a public service, as a weekly show, and I've been doing it since 2012. Can you do this? You don't have to do it for an hour. You can do it for half an hour, but it's a lot less complicated than a podcast. I love podcasts, but it's less complicated. It's you getting on Facebook Live, and Facebook Live will keep it on a replay, and it's free. I mean, you don't even have to pay for the bandwidth. And if you have content like I do that is in the middle, then that becomes paid content. Like what you just saw is paid content in the middle part, not this part, where I put it into my members area. I have it transcribed, and I have it, I thought someone was coming in. I have it transcribed, and it's enhanced so that there's a transcription, and then there's an edited, version of it with bumpers, in the beginning and on the end. So you're watching it for free, but it's also paid content for those in my members area, and that's under the Best of Alex category if you're one of our members, right? So go ahead and keep typing in your big takeaways. After I'm done, keep talking to each other. Like if you meet someone that you think you could joint venture with, or if you have a victory that you'd like to declare, say it here, right? You're in a safe place. Say it wherever you're watching right now. Just type in, a victory that you've had. That's another great way to get people engaged. We always start our team huddles that way. When we huddle and have a weekly meeting, we always start with a victory or a triumph, because it puts you in a positive focus. I learned that from Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach over 15 years ago. Start with something positive. So next week, I'm going to say, what's your biggest victory this past week? And let's see if we get some engagement that way. I think it's a pretty good way to start. And if you want to start now, type it in. And if you have similar victories, get with each other and connect, okay? At least on Facebook. All right. I'm Alex Mondosian, and I hope I see you next week. All good wishes.